Man in temporary car park. He is also an occasional supporter of human rights, provided people obey the law. So, to promote the launch of his new autobiography, I, Partridge, please welcome Alan Partridge.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. Before we start, I'd like to say any of you who are using iPads, Blueberries, or Flipjack cameras, and I think you're posting it on YouTube, I will find you. I will track you down. You don't know when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, but I will get up in your face. So, anyway, thanks for coming. I'd like to start with an extract which is rather pleasant, it's written in the present tense, which is a literary device. It charts the period of my own birth, which of course I can't remember all of that, but I garnered it from eyewitnesses. It's very well written. Pitter-patter goes the rain on the window. Pitter-patter. And outside cars zoom up and down the road, some of them dropping down into seconds to turn right into Dayton Road. On the pavement, people scurry, both to and fro. A clap of thunder, bam! And some really gusty wind. Everyone agrees it's a pretty dramatic evening all round. Pan right. It's a hospital room. A clammy, pregnant woman lies spread-eagled on the bed. And is about to produce a pitter-patter of her own. She's not going to wet herself. Well, that's often a distressing side effect of childbirth. I'm referring to the pitter-patter of children's feet. Stand back, says the midwife. Her contractions are massive. Get ready. Looks like Anthony Eden's about to be named Prime Minister, mutters a nurse as she strolls past the door. And Chelsea are about to win the first division title, replies an orderly, almost certainly not educated enough to follow politics. In the corner of the room, Rock Around the Clock by Phil Haley blasts from the radio quietly. You see, this wasn't now, it's then. The present tense used in this passage is just a literary device, as I mentioned earlier. So this next bit comes as a surprise. The scene is actually unfolding in 1955. The hospital, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in King's Lynn. The sweaty woman, Mrs. Dorothy Partridge, my mother. And the child's head slithering from her legs, it belongs to me. The child was I, Partridge. You've done it! Brilliant pushing, says the midwife. She holds aloft the newborn child like a captain lifting a fleshy World Cup. When the child throws back his head and roars the roar of freedom. The noise is relatively nonsensical, but no less intelligent than most babies would produce. In fact, it's probably a bit more switched on than average. In many ways, the proud wail that burst from my lungs was my first broadcast. Delivered to an audience of no more than 8, that's still equated to an audience share in the delivery room at least of a cool 100%. Not bad, I probably thought. Not bad at all. The next passage I'd like to read out is from a rather traumatic period in my life when I split from my wife Carol in the mid-90s. I kept a diary at the time. It was very traumatic, but I'll just read you one of the entrances from the diary, then I'll relate to the conversation I had the night I learned that my wife was, had betrayed me. She said September 1st, 1995, had a long chat with Bellotti, an experienced birder. He lent me his binoculars and has given me some advice on how to remain still for long periods of time and go completely undetected in undergrowth and shrubbery. It's surprising how many of these techniques can be used to track an enemy or errant spouse. And I was leaning forward slightly here. Yes, it seems the French-smelling sex provider was Carol's fitness instructor. Far from being French, he was actually from Luton. His only Frenchness was his cowardly choice and the kissing he did with my wife. I was waiting for Carol when she got back from the gym that evening. She breezed into the kitchen as I sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of wine. I hadn't drunk from it or opened it, drinking during the day. And I think the effect was been enjoying yourself, I said, but with loads of emphasis, so that it was clear that enjoying might have a double meaning. She said, like she didn't have a bloody clue. Have a nice time at the gym, I said, making inverted commas around the word gym. Yes, she said, her knowledge of mind function was pitiful. Have a good workout, I said, slotting my right forefinger in and out of a hole, I said, thumb and forefinger of my left hand. Yes, she said, not a flipper. Who doesn't understand the finger sex mind? I lost it, throwing my empty wine glass crashing to the floor. But it landed on the carpet of the hall in one piece. Careful, she said, suddenly irritated. You nearly broke that. What? Like you broke my heart? Silence. I was particularly pleased with this line because it's the sort of thing I'd usually think of long afterwards and then admonish myself not to do something. I know, Carol. I know. But then she turned to face me and looked so sad. And then on my behalf, on whose behalf I was trying, because I was making a right mess. I had a cold at the same time, so it was like a mucal tsunami. She picked up the wine glass and handed it to me, so I could have another go, and this time it clattered onto the lino where the stem snapped. Still not the smithereen effect I'd been wanting, but a bit better than before. Thanks, I said. Then she led me out into the garden and explained she'd been having an affair with her fitness instructor. I asked all the obvious questions. Since when? Why him? How can you be attracted to a man who basically wears leotards? She told me, including his name. Eventually, after lots of crying, shouting, and sighing, both, we went back inside. We realised that the next door neighbours were having a pre-Christmas drink so could hear everything. Enjoying this? I shouted through the hedge. You like a bit of grief with your mulled wine? I thought afterwards. I explained to Carol that I'd forgive her. We'd try again in the morning, perhaps go and talk to Sue Cook about it. She was shaking her head. I began frantically pitching shows at her, desperately outlining my portfolio of programme ideas in the hope of convincing her that we could be happy and rich. But she just kept shaking her head. The doorbell went. Bill Oddie was standing there. I opened the door to him and was just saying, "This isn't a good time, Bill." When he saw Carol, he could see I'd been crying, was clearly doing the mental math. No one spoke for a while, then Carol gathered up her things, brushed past, and headed back to the micro. She did the ignition, and the blast of The Winner Takes It All came to the speakers before she could switch it off. I began to cry, and she looked at me through the windscreen and reversed very proficiently onto the road. We watched her go until she disappeared around the corner, at which point we stopped watching. I noticed Oddie was just standing there. Not a good time, Bill. Yeah, I know, he said. I just wanted my delight. And finally, I'd like to, on an upbeat note, I'd like to read an extract of my life with Sonia, an Eastern European girlfriend I had for a period, who I had a very full and an enjoyable sex life. And I'd just like to sort of refer and relate to you one of our sexual experiences. At the time I was living in a caravan, which explains the location. Using the full area of the caravan, I like to pretend to be a KGB agent. But as a Ukrainian who spent half a life as part of the Eastern Bloc, she'd rather pretend to be an East German gypsy. So I did Stasi. I'd asked to see her papers before mounting her from behind over the twin hobs that were concealed beneath a workshop. She pretended to be confused, and, well, I think you get the idea, gents. At that point, we must draw down the veil. But it was more than sexual. Apart from the lots of sex we were having, Sonia had plenty more to offer. She had a wonderful anti-aging effect on me, like oil of Olay has on middle-aged women's cracked, cracky skin. Energetic, boisterous, and really, really zesty. She loved to laugh. Boy, how she loved to laugh. And she had a relatively infectious giggle. I'm glad to say that that was the only thing that was infectious. I had it fully checked out before anything happened. A lot of nonsense is spoken about germs being passed from one to another. There's nothing more unsexy than talking about venereal disease. So what I merely do is suggest, or insist, that we both take a hot bath together with 3 capfuls of Dettol. An activity that is sexy and hygienic. All in all, Sonia had that indiscriminate fun-loving quality that you often find from people from post-Soviet regimes. It's as if the people have cast off the state-imposed grumpiness of communism and are grabbing life with both hands. And while, of course, it becomes incredibly tiresome, it does, after a while, start to grate. But Sonia's love of practical jokes, sex, laughter, chintzy homeware, and relentless intercourse was a sometimes source of periodic happiness for quite a while. We broke up just hours after the house was completed. She was understandably miffed by this, but I explained patiently in rudimentary English. It was a new build, so I wanted shoes off at the door. She was hopeless at remembering to do this. Breaking the news to her wasn't easy. We'd been living together for 1.5 years, for goodness sakes, and she often talked about marriage. Ideally to me, but at a push to anyone with UK citizens. This was a big deal for her, so I locked myself in the bathroomette and got my assistant to do it. She broke the news with some relish. A bit too much, if you ask me. Of course, Sonia was devastated. She kept banging on the door and telling me to come out and face her. Knowing she was from a former Soviet country where human rights atrocities are commonplace, I had no idea what she was capable of. So I made a choice to stay inside. "Come out, Alan," she was shouting. Through the door I could hear my assistant trying to placate/fib to her. "He's not in there anymore," she attempted. "He clambered out of the window and ran off." I winced at her utter inability to lie and pledged to find her £10. "Alan, I love you," she kept shouting. Sonia, not my assistant. Poor kid, I thought, as I did my belt up. I was in the toilet anyway. But I became less sympathetic with each shout because it was repetitive, and the only thing I can enjoy which is repetitive is the theme from Steve Sunday. She stayed on absolutely ages. I found this irritating because I'd promised to send a showreel to bid up TV. The post office was going to shut. After a few hours, she calmed down and sloped off, but I'd missed the last post and never got the BU TV job. Shame, because it was one of my favourite channels, and I used to practice the patter in the shower, imagining I was selling Radox or a bath. Well, that's all from the book. If you want to read any of it, you have to do that yourself. There is a talking book. There's an audio book which is 8 hours long, in which I read the book out loud. It's time like to remove the lectern, and I will sit behind the desk and sign the book for you. If you don't mind, can you just it's nothing personal, but I'm just going to, in case you want to shake hands. Just because if I did catch anything, it would be a nightmare trying to track down who was the so I'll be wearing this.